Hey guys, welcome back to the second channel. Today I have a bit of an interesting video. Um, and it's kind of hard to describe. It's like games that I couldn't really get into. Basically, like games that are well loved by other people that I just didn't find myself enjoying for various reasons. I have four games here on this list, primarily that I am going to talk about in this video. Um, so without further ado, let's get started. Hopefully this doesn't anger too many people. Um, so the first one we're starting out with is a big one, Breath of the Wild. Um, and so this is probably the game that I enjoyed the most out of all these on this list. Um, there were a lot of things about this game I really enjoyed. I like the resource gathering system. Um, it was very different from anything I'd ever played because Breath of the Wild was actually my first open world game I ever played, and I really liked the exploration and kind of how serene the atmosphere was. Um, However, there were two main things I didn't like: the combat and, by extension, the weapon durability. So starting with the combat, I felt like the combat was too complicated. Every single time um, I would, play this game or come back to it, I would completely forget how the whole thing works, and I would have a hard time with the combat. And I feel like it's because it's kind of hard to say. I feel like it should have been at least I feel like what would have helped the, I guess, pacing of the game more is if it could have kept the same exploration, but it kind of like segmented the different aspects of combat bit by bit a little bit better. Oh, basically just kind of make it a little bit less to where you're not just kind of thrown in off the bat. I do understand the reason that they did that. However, I feel like it kind of creates a negative impact on player experience that way because the combat in this game is quite complicated, especially when you leave the Great Plateau with all the runes and barely any decent gear. Speaking of gear, that leads me to the second problem I had with the game, which is the weapon durability. And when I say this, I'm not saying that it's a mechanic that shouldn't exist in the game. I'm not saying that at all. I understand why this mechanic was in the game. And in fact, I like that it's in the game. However, I feel like it was executed poorly. You can have a good idea and it can be executed poorly. And what I mean by that is, uh, I feel like they break too easily. And my solution to this would have been, like, make them last a little bit longer per weapon. And also, I feel like the scaling in terms of, like, how fast a weapon breaks based on its damage and output the gaps between that kind of thing could have been bigger. I feel like as it stands in the base game, the weapon scaling system is not large enough to distinguish between the really good weapons and the kind of bad weapons that you have to use in the beginning of the game. I feel like if that scale was like bigger and like if some of the better weapons lasted longer, or even if there was a way to like repair weapons in some way, then I feel like that might have contributed to a better overall playing experience. Again, not docking the mechanic as a whole. I just feel like there could have been some improvements made, some like adjustments made to its execution in the base game. Um, and the next game I have to talk about is Red Dead Redemption 2. Um, so this game is one that I was really curious about trying, and I really wanted to enjoy it, and I thought it looked very nice, and I thought the story seemed to be going in a semi-interesting direction. Um, However, I have some bigger problems with this game compared to Red Dead, compared to Breath of the Wild. Um, and that being the combat, UI, and controls, because all of them kind of mesh with each other for the most part. Um, the combat, I feel like, really suffers from being clunky and hard to manage. And again, all these things really tie together. Like there's this part in the early game where you have to like shoot some wolves, and it's really hard. Like I was playing on my Xbox, and like my TV is not that far from the chair I was playing in, and it was still, oh, excuse me, it was still maybe because I am nearsighted, but it was still very difficult to understand like what was going on and to kind of aim the gun at the enemies. Um, and additionally, like the way that you like find cover is really weird. Um, and also just like the general like navigation. Getting into the UI here. The UI in this game is bad, like really bad. Because not only does it like make the combat bad and not very enjoyable, it also means that the mini map is extremely useless, and the health icons and stamina and things like that, they're like these little tiny like circular markers in the upper left corner of the screen, which is a design that makes absolutely no sense to me. And um, also just like trying to find your way around to navigate was extremely difficult. Um, and in fact, I think out of all the games that I'm going to be listing in this video, I think I had the most unpleasant experience trying out Red Dead 2, which is a real shame. So then we get to the controls, and put simply, the control scheme is clunky and slow, and it makes the combat slow, and it makes moving around the UI quite clunky as well. Basically, everything in this game I could describe as clunky. That's a great way to summarize all my problems with it. All right, we are back. So that about concludes my thoughts on Red Dead 2 and why I couldn't really get into it. The next game we're talking about is Fallout 4. Um, Now Fallout 4, it was just purely the combat. So, kind of to preface this, in general, in games, I despise gun combat. I think that it is needlessly difficult and extremely disengaging to the player because it is needlessly difficult. And I feel like Fallout 4 really suffers from this problem. because I really enjoyed the beginning to Fallout 4. I thought the idea for the game and like the setup into the exploration was fascinating. Like like the introduction was really well done, and everything about it was just really good. Um, However, when you actually start like getting into the enemies, like it's kind of like I found it was kind of hard to shoot. And then, like, when you get to the first city, you just find that you're completely outclassed by, like, the soldiers, and they just kill you in, like, a couple of hits. And you don't even really know what's going on because, like, the combat is kind of clunky and hard to figure out. Um, there were certain aspects of the interfacing that also caused problems with the combat, but that's more linked to the combat itself, not really problems with the UI, I think. And it's such a shame because I really wanted to like Fallout 4. It seemed like a game that I would really enjoy considering how much I love Skyrim. Excuse me. But ultimately it just the gun combat part of it just took me out of the game, which is a really big shame to me. Um and then the last thing that we come to is Mass Effect. I feel like this was the biggest like travesty of like how my experience ended up being with this game because I really wanted to enjoy this game. Um, the game is written primarily by Drew Karpyshyn, who is my um my favorite author. And he also did other BioWare games such as KOTOR, and he also helped like co-write one of the class stories in the Old Republic. So he's done a fair, and he's also did like the Baldur's Gate games. So he also did like quite a bit of those, and and I also read the series of Mass Effect novels that he wrote, which were all extremely entertaining. I loved them all those books. Minus the second one. The second one wasn't as good, but the first and third one were really good. Um, and I tried Mass Effect itself, also because I've heard good things about the first game, but also the second game was like extremely highly rated as like one of the best games of the 2010s or something like that. Like extremely highly rated game, kind of like Red Dead 2 or Fallout 4. Um, However, I feel like it really suffers. Um, the combat isn't as bad as Red Dead 2, I don't think, or as clunky as Fallout 4, but I feel like it's a little bit confusing to navigate. Um, and I feel like there are certain gameplay mechanics unrelated to the combat which I just didn't like. Like for example, the way that you have to like unlock things. That was kind of confusing. Um, it was also very confusing to figure out like where you were supposed to go and like this mechanic of like timed missions. One of the first major missions that you do on the Citadel is like this timed mission thing where you have to find this like female character before she's captured and like that gameplay mechanic was messy and not very well instituted. Um, so I think it's because of that like collection of minor things. I really just didn't find myself enjoying this game, which is a really tragic shame. Because I really wanted to enjoy it. Um, so that about sums up this video. That's games I couldn't get into because of various reasons. And I feel like if I were to rank them from worst to best, I think I'd go Red Dead 2, then Mass Effect, then Fallout 4, then kind of a cut above the rest of the others with Breath of the Wild because I still despite my problems with it, I still am able to go back to it and play it, which I really could not say for the rest of these games. Well, that is going to do it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching and expect more content on the second channel. Later.